Hello, I'm Murphy Daly, IT and AV Project Manager, and you are listening to and watching the AV Life podcast.
Hey there, it's Renee Benson at AVKC or AV Renee KC. You are listening to and watching the AV Life.
Hi, it's James King. I'm the writer for the IT and AV for higheredav.com, and you are listening and watching the AV Life.
Hi, this is Nancy Blanchard at Nancy Blanchard, and you are listening and watching the AV Life.
Hi, it's Kim Frank. I am AV adjacent, and you are watching and listening to the AV Life.
And I'm your host, Tim Van Wert, at T Van Wert or at the AV Life Pod. And I'm your host today, and you are watching and listening to the AV Life. Well, good evening, everybody, or good evening as we are recording this. I don't know what time of day you're listening to it, if you're commuting into work or if you're heading home or just lounging around in your home, staying safe. But we do have a great episode today. So hey crew, how are we all doing today?
Hey.
Hey,
Cool.
good.
So great to be here.
Yeah. Yep. And as Joe A would say, darn near perfect. I feel, you know what? Today is the first day in a while that I feel really good. Like today's a good day. There's that Will I Am song. It's a good day. So today is a good day. So I'm
Glad
feeling,
to hear that.
yeah. So I think
We've had some struggling days, so it's
we've
time
had
to have some good days.
yes, today is a good day. So, and yes, we have some great guests with us tonight. And we're gonna introduce them, and we're just gonna get rolling into it today because we have a lot of stuff. So we're gonna introduce them, then we'll go into our PM minute with Murphy, as we have been constantly going. And then the AV Superstar Spotlight is going, or Rockstar Spotlight is going to we'll start that off in February. It's for the Love of AV month. So that's how we're gonna show our love, is by sharing out. So it's a good start for that piece. So
The love of AV rock stars.
For the AVA, yeah, exactly. So we'll share the love, and really get it out there. So I'm gonna kind of go left to right as I see it on my screen. So first off, Harry Mead. Good evening, Harry. How you doing? Oh, and we lost your audio.
Not too bad. How are
There
you?
you are. You want to give us your little 30-second elevator spiel?
I've been in AV for basically 30 years, I think, at this point, or darting close to it. Crimped a lot of BNCs in my day. That'll age me. Mostly doing programming, doing government work now, programming and support.
Very cool. Well, thank you for being with us again. Harry's becoming a little bit of a regular here. So you better watch out. You may end up being a crew member at some point, And then I'm going to go to
me with a good time.
I'm going to go to the center square, the Alice square, as it were. Mark O'Kern. How you doing, Mark?
You should have found a better focus than me. But
you're perfect.
I'm good.
There.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, all right. Let's hear your 30-second elevator spiel.
Yeah, similar to I've been in the industry for 24 years. I've been on both sides of the table. I've been on the integrator side. I've been on the client side. These days, I mean, it's no big secret. So these days I'm with Cigna, the large healthcare insurance and health services company. So I'm a senior video engineer with them, and our small team oversees global video operations for, about 94,000 people.
Wow.
With there. So about 74,000 normal. And it's been an interesting year.
Oh yeah, I can imagine when you have people all over the place like that. Yeah.
That many people moving to work. Yeah. Well, we can talk about that later.
We'll talk. Yes, we will be getting into that. And Frank Patakala. Did I get it? I got it
right.
Yeah. How are you doing, Frank?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure. Definitely. Thank you for being here with us. And let's hear your 30-second elevator spiel.
I am Frank Patakala. I work for Diversified out of their New Jersey office. I am an AV engineer, but I'm also fairly strong on the IT side of things because that's where my background is. I have a huge passion for cybersecurity, and somebody said network security on AV Life, and I just had to be here. So that's my
Well, well, we're glad you're here, and we're glad you're bringing your expertise. And yes, this is an important topic nowadays. You know, we want to talk about network security, cybersecurity. We want to it's something that I don't think we can overdo this topic. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that this is something that it needs to be on the forefront at all times. And we'll get into it a little bit more, but there have been more attacks that we've been dealing with, some other things, especially for those of us in the higher ed end of things. So it's a nonstop fight. So why stop talking about it? Before we delve any deeper, I'm going to hand the baton off to Murphy and our PM minute. Take it away, Murphy.
I missed it last time, but I am back. Now, I forgot to say in my introduction, I wrote it down. I forgot to say IT and AV project manager, but also I'm a writer. And I want to tell you a story for the PM minute.
Of a lovely lady.
You may have heard of King Midas. You know Midas?
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to be rich, and he got his wish. I forget how he got it. That was what I was trying to Google. But he got his wish that anything he touched would turn to gold. What a great thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except everything he touched turned to gold. And so King Midas starved to death. This is a story to illustrate it's really important to get your requirements right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something you should do with a project. Make sure you specify what it is you want. You got to make sure that you say it's got to do this and it's got to do this, and these are excluded and this is included, and these are the things that we may need to decide, and this person's responsible for this and this person's responsible for this. Make sure that you get your requirements right and don't be the disaster of King Midas.
So have a plan, go and know what you need and go for it.
Think it through.
Think it through.
What are the consequences if I say I want, I don't know, 98-inch touchscreens in all the conference rooms? What does that mean? Probably a lot of money for one thing. But what do you really want? Come on, think it through.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying throwing everything at it, it doesn't work. Noted.
Or skipping some things. Think it through. Think it all the way through. Because you could get bit.
Well, yeah, no getting bit by that. So
and actually, this segues nicely into information security too. So I imagine there'll be a little. I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, now I know we always talk about this being as the project manager, but shouldn't this also fall on the client as well? Shouldn't the client have a pretty? I'm just playing devil's advocate here. So
it's great if the engineer, the person who initially sells it, finalizes it. But every single time that I start a project, I'm like, this is what we're doing, right? That's what I do when I start. I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. Does that sound right? Is that still what it is? And that's my habit every time when I start a meeting, this is what we're doing. I'll say it every time again, because things change along the way. And so you might have to go, okay, so we're not going to do that thing. Okay, fine. Then this is what that means. And this is what, so being clear on what the requirements are also lets you move it forward instead of like getting to the finish line and they go, that's not what I meant at all.
So a clear vision as well is helpful. And I know from an end user standpoint or from a client standpoint, having a set of standards definitely helps. It's something that I feel that some universities need to really get on. I know we're developing ours and trying to get that that in the, because that also helps when you're talking about maintaining and knowing getting the requirements right. When you have all your bricks in a row and you're laid out and ready to go,
in a large organization, in a university where you have a lot of AV deployments, having the requirements worked out can save you so much time, and it saves so much in operations instead of going, oh, that room is like this. it's different because of this, instead of having that and having all this time spinning around trying to remember, oh, that one has a different and this one is the other. But having those requirements and having some standards too is a huge time saver.
Mhm.
So
And that eliminates the guesswork and makes the job of a project manager just a little bit easier. So,
yeah. James, are you trying to say something with that freak out like background? Is that something we need to know
I gotta
about?
get a green. No, I gotta get a green screen. This is
He's going for like the Mr. Robot look with the background there.
yeah.
I was saying, your head fits perfectly right
really
inside the
kinda does,
hood.
yeah.
I noticed that. I was trying to get that.
Yeah, I was just saying, anything from our guests as far as like, what's your experience like with that, like, project managing things and making sure you get the requirements right.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with what Murphy just said, because like there's this mythical document that everybody talks about called a scope of work. Not sure how many of you have seen it, but it exists.
Yeah.
But I think it's critical, and sometimes it's very underrated how much we don't think about a project, because that is essentially the project process, right? If you cannot plan a project, maybe not to its entirety or 100% perfection, but understanding how this is going to end at the first day of your project planning is part of the process. So as an engineer, that's what I strive for every day, and I hope that's what companies should be working at. It's a collaborative effort. You can't pinpoint one particular person as any more responsible than the other. Everybody has a role to play, but making sure that happens can ensure how your project turns out, from being a success or being, oh Lord, I'm never going to call those guys again. So
Yeah, we actually force scopes internally
yeah,
as well in our projects, because it's granted it's enterprise, so the running joke is, it's like whose line whose line is it anyway, right, where the budgets are made up and the scopes don't matter.
Yeah.
But but all of our engineering teams across our org, whether it's video or voice or network or security, there's always a scope to every project that goes on, and that's how all the estimates, the cost, the internal shell game cost estimates are all done. But the good part about this is that when we've got that scope and we get a whether it's a user or sorry Murphy, a PM, sometimes it comes back and says, oh, we forgot this conference room. We go, well, that's cool, it's not in the scope, so you go get a controller to sign off on the budget and we'll talk about it. But it allows us to do that, and I think that there's a security component to this as well, of course, because as was kind of mentioned, you go off as soon as you start one-offing and you go off scopes, that's when things get missed, and that's when holes get created.
Yep, that's very accurate. Go ahead, Harry.
No, my big thing when I was doing integration, my big thing is you've got to have something to measure at the end, or else the job's not done.
correct.
And and if you can't define at the beginning what the job is actually going to be when it finishes, then you're just going to be there until everybody kind of nods their head and goes, oh, okay, I guess this will work.
Which will never happen, really. Never happens.
Somebody's always pissed off when that happens.
Exactly. I mean, again, I'm not saying that we can't change stuff. I mean, feel free. Clients have all the freedom of the world to change stuff, but have some sort of definition, a structure towards the project. And it doesn't matter who does it, it needs to be there. This has to be there on a project. Planning and a scope. And, if you break it down further, you should actually break it down into individual departments and functions and their scopes. That's what makes it even more efficient. Like, what does the engineer do? What does what does this programmer have to do? Because Harry, I'm sure you'll agree, like a set of drawings to you mean nothing if they don't tell you what the intent of the room is and what they're expecting in a proper scope.
Oh, I am so dealing with that all over this friggin' campus. Yes, I am. Yeah, it's like we get drawings. There's about an 85% chance that they're right.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, well, this is kind of weird. Why the hell did they do that?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sure somebody had a good reason at the time, but nobody's left that knows what the reason was. So it's like, we're just going to tweak that out of there.
More realism, less impressionism. Yeah.
How do you bridge the gap between a client who doesn't really know how to fill in the the scope, how to say these are the things I need. Like they have in their head, well, this is kind of what I want, but they don't know enough to articulate all the different things that they need. So as a project manager, how do you translate?
So
I was going to say that. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Harry.
I was going to say, used to work at smaller companies, so I've done a lot of the different jobs on the front end. So when I was working on the sales side more, I mean, I still did the engineering, but I was going out and talking to clients and such. And initially, basically, what I would do is I would kind of guide them. I mean, it's almost a game of 20 questions of, okay, so it's like, we want a really big TV. Okay, so now we need to define what really big TV means. Now, what do you actually want to watch on your really big TV? What have you? I mean, and even it could be just, have you thought about? Having thrown out a few rounds of have you thought about, just to see what they really want to do for any particular room. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be just a room that everybody goofs off in. We just need a TV tuner and maybe a laptop connection and everything's fine. Okay, good. We're done. Yay.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh no, this is going to be the endpoint for our conferencing. So we need to make sure that we've got installed audio in and out and video and the whole 9 yards. So it's like, okay, so you have to kind of, and some of it is asking questions about what their workflow is right now. Yeah, because one of the things that, and this seems to be AV wide, one of the things that we have had a problem with in AV is we come in and say, yep, here's exactly how you should this room. And then people are like, this doesn't work how we work. So it turns into a friggin' boat anchor after like 6 months.
Yeah, it's a user experience. And as you were saying, some bring consultants in from the very beginning, the get-go, or if it's an integrator, then it's you coming in and like you said, it's more listening. Even if the end user doesn't particularly know what they want, it's listening to how every day are people working? How are they communicating? How are they, even collaborating? I'll tell you, here in Silicon Valley, wow, a very large company, and it's gone through its share of integrators and had a consultant, and there's projectors that are installed where they shouldn't be installed. There's a room where it's all glass windows, and the way where they put the screen is not where it should be put. So I agree. But it really, you have to understand you've got users coming in that aren't experienced. So if they're going to go into that meeting room, it's got to be as simple as possible for them, so that you're not generating all those tickets.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with Nancy, because I think she hit a key word there: simplifying. Right. That's how you get things done. Right. I like to think of it as like three. I boil every project down to 3 questions, right? Especially when dealing with a client who doesn't know what he needs. Well, he knows he needs something, right? So what do you want, or what do you expect, is probably the first question. The second question is, that's probably where the technical resources need to come in and say, these are how you would possibly do that. And then the middle ground is, how much do you want to pay for it? What's your budget like? And then you sort of like expand on it. You get into the processes. You understand the thing. It's about getting, and I think it's critical that engineers, salespeople, people in the AV force are flexible, and you got to tone your communication style to what works with the client. So if you're a client, if your client likes phone calls, do that. If he's a guy who does better on like emails, do that. But communicating it, getting the message across, and not just because you want to cover yourself, make sure that people get it. I have a client that I'm working with. I sent him an email. I know he reads his emails. It's an amazing client, very smart bunch of people, but I still do that courtesy call and say, hey, did you have any questions on that? Am I okay to go with this? And he says, yeah, we're good. I mean, I've been working with them for 5 years almost now, so they know me, but still, it's important that you do that extra effort, try to understand them, and simplify it. That's what I think.
Right.
That's
and also, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead,
Also,
Nancy.
there are some that don't understand that. They think, okay, well, as we're going through the process, oh, well, I want to change this, I want to change that. And it's like, well, it's a change order, which means more money. And that really needs to be enforced at the very beginning to say, okay, well, we can go through this. However, if you want to change, well, then this is what we have to do. And it
Murphy's smiling at the word change order.
That's why they were created.
I don't have any problem with change orders. That's fine. But I also, at the beginning of every project with a customer, say, this is what we're going to do if there's a change order. So be prepared. And if there's a change and it costs less, we'll give you money back.
Mhm.
But if it's a change and it costs more, then this is what's going to happen. This is how long it takes. And a lot of some of my other project manager people are really afraid of it, and they end up just like, we can't pass on costs. I'm like, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. You totally can. It's not a problem at all. In fact,
The funny thing that I've noticed is that clients always have a problem with, it's always problems with finances at the beginning of a project. But once something goes wrong, everybody has tons of, it's like, we just have the treasury department open for us. Fix it somehow. I don't know. I mean, just get it working. So I think that's also on the team that's working with them to let them know that, hey, a little bit of planning here could save you so much more down the line.
Right.
I was going to say, Harry, there's also, when working with government projects, you can't just say, well, we're going to give you something different. It's
No.
Yeah.
You can't just swap out.
Yeah, no. No
So,
surprises,
yeah.
like, well, we don't, in order to make it work, we have to add this little thing that we forgot to put in the bomb. No.
Oh yeah, no. And I mean, and that even comes down to manufacturers and where it was manufactured, and there was a story. I guess it was the last real Infocom we had.
That's a movie I want to see.
Astral Infocom.
Oh wow.
Where my coworker and I, we were walking around, and we were trying to find projector manufacturers that matched our needs for what we needed. I mean, we were very specific. We needed something stupid, like we needed 10,000 ANSI lumens. We needed a couple other things, and it also had to be compliant so that it was manufactured like not in China, and some other things, so that it actually passed security, because anything that has memory needs to pass the security. So we're having some issues right now. We've got to get a couple of central controllers out of a couple of secure areas. That's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And I'm distracting everybody because I brought Bernie to the party here. So he's yeah, let me talk about like just how fast of a meme that like became. Like within 24 hours, Bernie is literally everywhere. Like this is what he needed like 4 years ago. Yeah.
I was going to
Did
Oh.
say
you
it was
see
more like
someone-
6 hours. He was everywhere.
Someone created a widget where you can just type in an address, and they use the Google Map street imagery, and they'll put Bernie wherever you type the address in. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Like you can
You
have it
see-
in front of your office, your house,
Yeah.
the middle of Times Square. Great.
Like Kim and Tim. You guys see the one with him on the beach and with Chrissy?
With Chris Christie, yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one too.
And I just posted one. Remember Burton? Was it Burton Ernie's or no, The Weekend? Remember the movie where they had the dead guy?
Oh, Weekend
Weekend
Bernie.
at Bernie's.
So I just posted that one because I saw it with him in the boat.
Poor Bernie.
This is it, and he's not even dead yet. It's like, oh, poor Bernie.
No, you're right. If he had this 4 years ago, he might have had that in the bag.
Yeah.
It's like that might have just because then everybody would have known him, and everyone would have been like, oh yeah, like
Yeah, that's that guy.
He's
that
a
was-
guy. Yeah, he's that mean guy.
There is a great video of Demi Moore in Ghost making the pottery, you
Yep.
know, and then it's the gloves, the Bernie Sanders gloves come around.
So and actually as an interesting segue, we talk about Infocom, not about Bernie Sanders. Coming up actually is the HETMA conference. So for all of you higher ed folk that are out there, and even for our technology provider friends that are out there, you can register and join us. Harry and Frank will also be there and discussing further with our cybersecurity, I believe, is what you guys are talking about, more or less. So they will be continuing and having more conversation regarding that during the conference. So hetma.org, go ahead and reach out there, and myself and James and other HETMA members will be there, and of course Joe Way, who's not here to talk about it himself, so I will talk about it in his stead. And I'm half tempted to talk about his book, but I'm not going to do it.
I was just going to say something. I
Don't
was
drop
just,
the book.
holding my breath.
There's a book out there
go ahead,
somewhere.
Let's get
There's
the
a book.
shameless plugs out of the way. He wrote a book.
Producing Worship. It's a book. Go find it on Amazon. And I think it's on
It's in Walmart now too.
It's in Walmart now.
Yeah.
He was very excited about that.
I'm sure. No, we're done with you.
And now we're done. Okay, that was it. Oh, no, wait. HigherEdAV.com.
Oh, yeah.
And Higher Ed AV podcast. And yeah. Oh, and also, well, no, never mind. We're going to stop there. So yeah, thank you, Murphy. That was a great PM minute. We're gonna shift gears and we're gonna move into our topic for tonight. And so actually we kind of started touching on it, that we've changed the way that we work here. Globally, we've changed the way we work. More people are home, less people are in offices. Some people are getting back to a little bit of normalcy, but at the rate that our technology is changing, so is the risk to our systems. Because as fast as we're developing new stuff, somebody with bad intentions is coming in and finding a way to try to break it, or to find information, or because that information is worth money. And so having said that, I'm going to leave it to our guests. I'm going to leave it open to the panel. What do we think of some of our current security threats are that are out there?
Big one right now is a SolarWinds.
I was just going to say, can we jump into SolarWinds maybe to start?
Go right ahead.
Because because I think that the SolarWinds thing leads into a larger discussion here of there's a danger when looking at security, especially when we look at it as technical people. I think most people here who are technical will agree with me that we tend to look instantly at the technology and the fixes for it, rather than looking at a systemic approach. Mm-hmm. and starting out with a security framework. And I can probably hear Frank going, "Hey, I heard the word framework over here." But looking at something like the NIST standards and for both large and small business, and looking at things systemically, and that's SolarWinds really exposed this. For anybody listening who doesn't know, and there's been a lot in the news about how SolarWinds happened, but if you're not really familiar with the internals, without getting overly technical about it, this was a well-organized, it was a supply chain hack. And it started back in, it looks like 2019, they started putting versions of this malware. I think it was Sunspot, I think was the original trial runs that they started seeing out there. So what they did is basically I think at this point it's out there that it was a nation state, that it was likely Russian, got into SolarWinds. And I haven't heard if they've done that through, if it was a password, a weak password, or whatever it was. And they basically modified the SolarWinds Orion product. And I think that this is important in AV because we tend to trust things we get from manufacturers, right? If we get when Crestron gives us something, I'm not bashing that, saying Crestron has holes or anything like that, or Biamp or whoever it happens to be gives us hardware, we tend to trust we trust the code that runs on the box. We trust the operating system that runs on the box. And in the case of the SolarWinds Orion hack, they'd replaced a DLL. And then what they did is basically through there, they were able to, over the course of months, this was a very methodical, slow thing. They were able to use a dropper program that literally took a penetration tool and dropped it in strategic places until they were ready to actually activate the hack. But this was, so I mean, these were companies that were getting their updates through legitimate channels, government agencies that were getting their updates through the legitimate manufacturer, and it was hacked right off the manufacturer. So, you know, you can focus on securing a box, you can focus on securing a firewall, but if you don't have a systemic approach to it, and I you know, the industry just got hit in terms of security.
Isn't that kind of like people felt secure? They go, I'm washing off my lettuce, but the poison is inside.
Right. It's it's the food itself is contaminated.
Yeah.
It's a frightening hack. Just the way it happened. I mean, we've seen with Home Depot and with Target, right? We've seen attackers come in through vectors that were third party, which should scare any AV company, right? They came in through. I mean, how many of us, when we work for integrators, have connections into our high dollar clients? I mean, I did when I was on the integration side of the house.
Yep.
Target, they came in through an HVAC vendor, I think it was.
It was.
Yep. Yes.
And and escalated into the point of sale system. Don't get me going on the fact they were able to get from HVAC to point of sale. But yeah, and no AV company wants to be that attack vector.
Right.
Yep. And that's actually my big thing is I am no security expert, but my look at this is I don't want my InfoSec manager coming to me and saying, we got hacked from your equipment. And so I do everything I do to my knowledge to protect us and all that stuff. So that's like you were saying, Mark, no AV company wants or should want to be that low hanging fruit. And
now, by the time you get that phone call, the damage is done. And and believe me, they're calling lawyers looking to figure out who's going to be liable for this.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely true. I mean, just to add on there, I think the biggest concern about the AV industry, and not just any industry that has started developing their solutions to coexist with the IT, the problem therein is that you cannot use your traditional way of looking at things and be successful in IT security. IT security is an established industry. It's like, and see, again, this is one of those IT arguments that we always have. The only thing that we have to worry about IT is security. Not really. Security is its own little, well, not little, one huge beast that you got to deal with, right? And understanding how security people do it is probably the only way we can resolve it. And it's unfortunate, AV has traditionally relied on just being an island. This is how we survive. We just, we're not on your network, so we're good, right? But that doesn't hold true anymore. It does not hold true at all. I mean, if anything, what the last year and the pandemic did with how much UC has grown, it just means that your device is somehow connected to the client's network to give the functionality that the client desires. So now comes the question, do you have the skill set to approach these things from a security mindset as opposed to an AV mindset? Sure, the experience is great. Sure, it sounds great. Sure, it looks great. But it also looks great to some cybersecurity guy, somewhere. And please, I always say this whenever I get to talk about security, please do not believe Hollywood stereotypes. These are not people sitting in some basement with, poor internet connections and dimly lit rooms and trying to hack. No, these are organized vectors who are planning this. There are corporations, there are companies that actually do this, and that's their full-time thing. That's their gig. That's what they live to do, right? And I know we started this off with saying we were trying to talk about the biggest concerns. My biggest concern in cybersecurity is people.
Oh yes,
because we are the biggest link in all of this.
As Frank was saying, is yeah, everyone knows the Hollywood hacker, sitting there in the basement, hood over their head, you can't see their face. Hackers nowadays are very personal. I mean, you look at that Twitter hack. How did they get those admin password accounts? By social engineering. They became friends on social media sites with people who had admin access. Also, like I took a pen test class, and the instructor was telling us how how easy it was dropping the word IT. He was hired to pen test a bank. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna go. I randomly picked a branch. He walked into the branch, goes, I'm here from IT. I need access to your vault. Teller took him right into the vault. There was no ticket from IT, no check-in ID, nothing. Just took him right into the vault. And of course, they fixed all that. That's what his job was to do. But that's the thing is, like Frank said, people are our weakest link in cybersecurity.
Well, not to, I mean, and not to steal, Harry's done government work here, and I'm sure some of the rest of us have too. But there's a reason why some of these, why some organizations and some enterprises and some government agencies have some rules that are just sacrosanct, and you do not modify them. That nobody goes in there, or this network is air gapped for a reason.
Yeah.
I was reading a great article. It was interesting. I came across it. It was a UC thing on the phones that are on the president's desk, and this was during the Trump administration, but it doesn't change president to president much. And they were discussing the two Cisco phones that were on there, and there's the one phone that you see that's got the box on the back, and that's for the Tempest system, and has some features to physically disconnect the mic when there's a hold and things like that. And then the other phone is actually for a totally isolated, secure executive communication system from POTUS and a number of different cabinet secretaries, that it doesn't touch the outside world. And there's a reason for that.
Well, that's also why there was a concern as well, since now we have a new president, and his Peloton was apparently the question, just like Obama was with his BlackBerry. Like you bring in those wild cards, and that's a question. Like that's something that needs to be looked at. And that's a possible, as you were saying, it's a gap. It's Mark, it was like you were having standards and having things a certain way is what helps keep things secure. And then that's your curveball. That's your oddball that you don't know. And how are you going to secure it? And how are you going to make
the only thing I want to make a little difference between the Obama and with Biden's situation is Obama's was his cell phone, which was a BlackBerry, which was designed for business. So security should have already been in their mind. This was a business tool that was also used for personal. We all know our smartphones now. The problem with the Peloton is this is I think is one thing I wanted to bring up, not any with the Peloton in general, but it's a consumer device. So security is very weak on consumer devices. They don't think of security. I mean, how many of us are running points of sale systems in our home? Probably very few. So having a Peloton bike at home, your security, you're not thinking about that. Same with like Apple TVs, which again, they do have decent security on them. But like these consumer grade devices are now making their ways into corporate or even high security networks. I mean, I really think Harry might have some government insight here for us. So I'll let him talk.
Well, before we go into that, it was like, that's actually part of everyone being remote now. And I have, in my house, I have a bunch of Amazon Alexa devices, so IoT devices. I have, my wife's working from home. She actually has a credit card machine for her job that's here. So you said about point of sale. I was like, well, I got a credit card machine that's here. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but we'll I'll have to work on my network security to make sure I got that.
I'm taking notes, by the way, just letting you know.
Frank has your IP already.
The alphabet soup at the end of my name, it's CEH stands for Certified Ethical Hacker. So
there you go.
But
I can tell you with my company, Williams AV, we've had since I would say May, it's gotten really bad. I had an email, which was from our new CEO, who was reaching out to me, and it looked like a personal email. And what we've all been told is first pass it by the IT guy. And sure enough, and a couple other people got the same one. I've had emails from people internally, but it's really not from them. So they're getting really sneaky with how they do it. So it's easy to fall for it, but we've been told, if it just doesn't seem right, look at what the address is, where it's coming from, and you'll see that's not, anybody internally. So
and if it's coming from someone who's wearing a hoodie,
So we at Stockton, one thing we did, which I'm sure a lot of places are doing now, is our email administrator actually turned on in Outlook. I want to say it's a setting in Exchange or Office 365 that tells you if the email is actually external or internal.
Yeah.
So we get an email from an external site. It says right there in the headline, big bold red letters, external email, not in-house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I think you're going to see, and I'm betting I'm going to get Harry's head nodding here too. It's on some of this is that I think you're going to see more of a push. God, I hope so, of two-factor authentication, or at least a multi-factor authentication. I mean,
yes.
As someone who's done contract work for the feds before, I mean, it's if you've ever worked at a federal agency with a keyboard where you have to put your ID in and then enter your password.
Mm-hmm.
Where you've got that type of a two-factor, but I think we're going to see hopefully more of that. Now the problem, of course, is social engineering and user pushback. And the first time you get a C-level who complains that, oh well, I can't log in because I forgot my hardware security key today. Then now you're going to be at a risk of that going away. But I'm hoping that we're going to see more of that type of a thing happening, at least for personal information. It's something I encourage everybody else to do, but it all comes down to people.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's the beauty of like security frameworks,
mm-hmm.
Like ISO 27001. It's like Mark said before, I have a huge passion for security frameworks. There's several out there. None that are established for any particular application, but they all take information from each other, right? And that's the point of security frameworks. It actually it foresees issues like that. Like somebody forgets this. What's the process? How does he get it? And you can stipulate time limits, like how can he do it? How long can this particular class of ID be issued, or a particular token? How long does it last? And things like that. That's what we as the industry in AV should be focusing on, getting to understand more and more about security, right? Just reading on it, learning about it. That's just it.
I was gonna say on the two-factor security thing, this is not the only way I get into my laptop. There's extra things I have to do past putting this in the side of my laptop. Strategically covered.
Yeah,
I think I
put but I mean, most people who've never done
into everybody.
Yeah, but most people who've never done government or worked for the federal government don't realize that they have systems that you have to use the card plus extra factors.
So let me pull a Bradford Ben here real quick. Just for those listeners who don't understand what two-form factor authentication is, it's a method of using two separate ways to authenticate into a system.
Mm-hmm.
Just for those listeners who may not know what Mark and Frank and Harry are talking about.
Yeah. Well, I do like that now. It's not just a little secure fob thing. So there's also apps that do it too. So, at least if you have your phone, that which now most of us do, at least now you can get your authentication through there. So
as I say, quick story on that. Yeah, don't change phones without logging in between.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
When
yeah.
you use the authenticator, and then you can't. Yeah, ask me how I know
Yeah.
that one.
Yep. I
But
know that too.
I mean, just an example. I mean, first of all, backtracking slightly, I can't say much about SolarWinds, but Mark, you got most of it right. The like just for my own laptop from here, I've got my card, I've got a login. That's just to open the laptop. Then there's another login to get to the VPN where I can then that gets me into the network. Then I have to go to a separate area to get another password that's a bunch of gibberish gobbledygook that changes every 8 hours. And that's how I remote desktop into another server where I can actually get to my systems
and actually do work.
So
yeah, we do similar. I mean, we're not government, we're large enterprise, but yeah, I mean, we've got systems where if I have my daily, and the idea behind two-factor security is that there's something you have and there's something is the basic way of putting it. There's a something physical.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah, actually it's something you have, something you are, and something you
right.
know.
In theory, yeah. It's
which means if it's something you are, you would be using
biometrics in that case,
things like that, or something like a password or or like a token or some kind of combination that about, or a secret question.
I think there's going to be a good biometric topic coming up a little later in this podcast.
But I was going to say, because I've got to get on campus, I have to do 3 different variations of that. I've got the card, I've got something I have to key in, and they also check faces against what pops up on the computer.
And that's assuming that you're someone who's allowed in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's if it doesn't pop up with a big red screen that says no, take them down.
Not authorized for this. But it's interesting. Harry mentioned the rotating passwords, and that's something that I would be willing to bet most people in AV have never thought of, is that there are systems out there that use multi-factor authentication for for us to get into, like for me as an engineer to get into, where I use a multi-factor authentication to get into that system, which gives me a password to get into my some of my infrastructure. I have no idea what that password is, and that password is not going to be the same in a few hours. I have no clue what it is day to day, and it's long enough that you're not going to remember it, and it's junk.
I was gonna say, I make the joke every time I'm putting it in. If you've seen Bert Kreischer, it's like, oh, QR star circle hash.
And at least in our case, in my case, I have a limited amount of time to get that password entered. Or I get to so it's like my mother sits there and tries to figure out like her little passwords. Like, I don't remember how to unlock my phone in time. I'm going, oh, shut up.
Which is usually password or 1, 2, 3, 4.
Got the same combination on my luggage.
My password.
Raise your hands if you have a password that you haven't changed in 6 months. There you go.
Couple.
See, bad practice.
But
not anything like it's all like low level
maybe,
But again, let's go with that. Is how many are AV people are not changing the default password of their equipment? I mean, how many, like anybody can Google and get the default password. I mean, we use AMX here. Everyone knows the default password in AMX, and that's easy enough to find. I mean, I'm sure Extron and Crestron, and now these companies have changed their practice, but I still remember back when my main role was our CCTV. And there was a big article that hit at that time, our CIO, who's a different role now, but our CIO, big article about there's this website you can go to and find all these open CCTV systems. And he came down to my office. He's like, are we vulnerable? I'm like, No. First thing I do is change password. Second thing I do is change port. Third thing I do is throw it on a private network. Like, no, we're not vulnerable to this.
Well, and security should never be, it's never one, it's never one layer, at least properly done. It's never one layer, right?
Right.
It's the, okay, I've got a, you know, let's say a video, let's take a video conference endpoint, because I know we're going to, you know, get the video conference endpoints. You know, say, well, our video conference endpoints aren't secured. It's like, well, okay, but even if there's a breach there, hopefully those are sitting properly secured behind firewalls, and you're using border controllers for your communication. So in theory, somebody should never have access to those.
Right.
You know, the idea being is that there should be multiple failures before you hit that breach point. But that's, again, I think the danger of something like when you've got SolarWinds and you have things, especially that can be a software as a service. Where's Joe when we need to talk about it as a service?
Thinking the same thing.
You know, but
that's all of a sudden Joe is dialing in.
Yeah, I know. Watch it. He's all of a sudden pop up and just.
But you know, you wonder why sometimes some of us in you know, large enterprise or government or other things, you know, fight sometimes against moving to the cloud. You know, it's you're only as good as the weakest link in your security. And I mean, yes, fine. Amazon's got great security engineers, but you know what? I know ours.
Right.
Well, and I mean, the one of
so that's not a good security.
And for those, I don't know if this is going to show up on the recording, and for those listening at home, James has showed us a picture of a gate over a driveway, but you can see people have driven on the grass to go around it both ways because there's plenty of flat open grass for them to do so.
Our biggest problem is we're still overcoming inertia. AV has habitually sucked at security. Just flat out, no question.
The old way was just to say, fine, we'll have really good descriptions in our contract so that we're not to blame.
Well,
that doesn't cut it.
No, it doesn't.
The manufacturer as well. Like,
yeah, but I would argue in the age of social media, that'll bite you because it's not gonna matter.
Yeah.
You know, it's well, okay, maybe you're not legally liable there, but think about I mean, I'm, you know, Target had insurance, Home Depot's got insurance. Think of the damage, or Anthem. Think of the damage though that was done to those companies' reputations. I mean, it doesn't matter whether or not your client can sue you. You're going to be toast within the industry.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm agreeing with you, Harry. We should not have inertia. There needs to be positive action to resolve and build.
And there have been,
and there has been, but it's mostly been learning from the 2x4 hitting them upside the head.
Yeah. I mean, Harry, you heard about that with the Harman, with the AMX, right? With the superhero.
I was about to go there. I am on AMX stuff all day, every day. That is my bread and butter right now. And which for me is nice because it's what I started out coding. But so I just like being able to read the code as opposed to connecting all the friggin' dots in Crestron, but that's another story. A few years ago, in the friggin' White House Situation Room, you could see the fact that there was AMX stuff in there. And that's fine, except that buried in the damn source code was a backdoor login to the thing. And apparently there were people that were warning in a rather loud and boisterous manner internally about it, and nobody was doing anything about it until suddenly it hit the damn news, and everything went just straight to hell with that. And we had to do. I mean, I wasn't in at that point. I wasn't doing I wasn't doing straight government at that point. But I mean, that was a real quick firmware upgrade that happened on every AMX box you could get your hands on. And
it There's a great book
I
out
mean,
there for large enterprise, especially, but it applies across, and it's one I would encourage everybody to read. Not a security book. So if you're going, I'm not reading a security book. No, it's more of an organizational thought book. It's called The Challenger Launch Decision, and it's an analysis of what went wrong at NASA in the culture that led up to the Challenger explosion back in '86. And it's a case study of what you're talking about, Harry. It's just this, the amount of inertia and just the whole, you've got the engineers screaming, and management just kind of going, eh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the engineers talked about, the night before the Challenger blew up, he was laying in bed, and his wife said, "What's wrong?" He goes, the shuttle's going to blow up tomorrow. He goes, and I can't do anything about it. And literally nobody listened.
Okay.
Yep.
Right now, the whole world has had a certain amount of inertia because inertia in the sense that we're all going the same direction because we've all decided on what we're doing to fight this pandemic, which is we're in the inertia of all staying home for the most part. We've all agreed on this. So if we can take that inertia, that agreement in the same direction, and put it towards something, that would just be marvelous. Wouldn't it be great if we could skip over that ridiculousness?
Murphy, have you seen AV in the AM? Not just this recently, but before it was, what are you doing about the pandemic every other week? It was, oh, we should get system requirements. Oh, we should, like, all of the same
It should have been dealt with 20 years ago.
We've been talking about for the last 20 years. It's like, I've even said it a couple of times. Who doesn't know this crap by now? And can we beat them?
Well, I think unfortunately we also are in a world where we've got a lot of hard-headed people who've been around a long time that know it their way, and it's their way, and it's their way, and that's the way it is.
Exactly.
And I think the pandemic opened the scab and said, okay, here are the things we should have been doing to do now. And not that that's an excuse, but
yeah,
I mean,
we've traditionally
work.
always had a very poor response system to anything security related, and that's just how AV has been. Because when you rely, like I said, like when you rely on air gapping things or not having connections and not putting enough emphasis into it, that becomes a challenge. And I'll say this, right? I feel like the manufacturers are doing a decent job, especially I'd say the bigger ones at least are doing a good job of trying to make their products more and more cybersecurity compliant. They're going to penetration testing. They do independent testing. There's a lot of work being done there. I think the bigger issue, and this is the problem with anything security related, right? Security is an individual thing. It has to start from general awareness. So people need to learn about security. People need to understand what a security approach is. And that starts with your sales people. It starts with your engineers, your project managers, everybody who's dealing with AV and has a piece of the AV project needs to understand what your role is in the security process, which could mean something as simple as asking the client, hey, who's going to decide on this particular port allocation? Who's doing that? Is that your IT department? Who do we talk to make sure that this particular IP address requirement or this particular, your network segregation happens? Things like that. The communication needs to happen at all levels. That's the only way this is ever going to happen. Otherwise, we're going to hear it. Like, I know we're discussing articles about, breaches and, SolarWinds and so on. Very soon we're going to hear like some AV company put in some device on there, it was hacked, and it took down something big,
Oh yeah. I mean, like, going in front is what I'm seeing. And nowadays it seems that some more manufacturers are trying to be in the forefront, but a lot of them had to be hit over the head with a 2x4 first. I mean, going back to what Harry was talking about with the AMX, with the superhero virus. I mean, I'm sure Harry knew about this. It wasn't that they just had the back door, which was bad. It was a superhero name, login account, back door. They got flagged for it by a pen tester company. So what AMX did was they rolled out a firmware for it. All it did was change the account. It was still a backdoor account, another superhero account, So someone there had a thing for superheroes. They got flagged again, and then they really fixed it. Like I said, it took them getting hit in the head with a 2x4 to fix it. Now, I like AMX products, so I'm not talking bad about them. But like let's look at now with the whole Java, the Flash player. I mean, I I don't know much about Crestron. I know of it. I know all that stuff, but I was told they sent out to their customers, don't update your computers
Mhm.
because Flash player was being pulled out. Like that is not something I would expect from a big company. Like Flash player was announced that it was going to die in 2017. We're now 2021. That's almost 4 years, like 4 years there.
There are people out there
Yeah.
that really, you know the old joke, Apple doesn't have any viruses. Sure they do. It's called
Oh,
Flash.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, to bring your point, and shameless plug here. On an episode on IT Factor, which I host at AV Nation, I had Mark and Anthony Tibby on our show, and what we did is we actually did a live hack of a Crestron system live. Like he went to a browser, an IoT browser called Shodan, and searched for Crestron devices, found a home somewhere, and were actually able to access their X panel, and we could have turned their lights off, on, done all kinds of things. But it's like it's out there. It's on the public internet. There were no
Mhm.
passwords, not even default passwords. It was just there was no passwords.
Wide
We
open.
went there. We just logged in and we did it. That's how it is. So who do you blame for that? Really, it's a residence, and you can't expect the homeowner to say, "Hey, I want this to be secure" and stuff like that. He doesn't even understand some of these things. It's up to us, the technology people, to say, "Yeah, maybe this is out of my my expertise, but I'll bring in somebody who can do it," because there's people for this everywhere. You can
Well, I mean,
always
and
find
and
somebody.
IT's far from perfect on this too. I mean, I remember
Exactly.
I remember years ago I was doing a digital signage project at a casino, of all things, and I won't name and shame because it was a major, it's just major Vegas, and long story short, I ended up getting access to their core switch, and when I had to
Wow.
look at some of their multicast, when I was looking at multicast routing, and their network head is going, "How'd you get in?" I'm like, "Well, dude, you probably should pick a different password than Cisco for this."
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, now granted, this was probably 12, 15 years ago, when people were still being stupid about this, and you used to be able to run unencrypted passwords on Cisco devices and things like that. But IT can be just as guilty. And in the
Oh yeah.
time of working at home, I don't know about you, but the idea for me of webcams in everybody's home office, I'm just going like, oh God, who's got to, like, my mother, for example, right? I live in fear of video calls with my mother, and I'm glad that she only knows how to answer them, not make them, because I know darn well that she's got Post-it notes around her place with passwords on them.
That I was just actually going to go about that. I actually mentioned this on an episode of EdTech, another AV Nation. Sorry for the plug there, but virtual backgrounds. People, they're fun. Yes, it was annoying because I don't have a proper green screen, so I'm in and out, and that can be a little annoying on a call like that. But again, we go about social engineering. If I was right now with my virtual background off, you can see, okay, I'm in a room that has one window. A hacker can actually start using that information to trace you. Or you could be a CEO and have important information on your desk. I still remember that one article. It was Japan, a Japanese pop star was stalked by one of her crazy fans, and the way he tracked her was by using reflection of landmarks in her eyes. Like she did such a good job to try to hide where she was because he was taking selfies. But no, there was nothing else in the picture. But he zoomed in on her eyes and got the reflection of landmarks around her and found her home by using that.
That's incredible. That also just shows the length that some of them will go to get the information
Scary.
that you need.
Yeah.
So, I know Mark, you need to be leaving us shortly. Are there any?
Yeah, I've got a
parting-
couple extra minutes here because somebody's running late, but
do you
I'll
have
have to
any? Do you have
probably
any
about 10 to
parting?
15.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you have any parting thoughts before you want to get out there before we?
Just in case I have to drop suddenly.
Yeah, I was gonna say you've been doing great. We've loved hearing from you, and we don't want to miss out on any other thoughts that might be brewing around. in that.
Nothing yet. Although although I did see on our agenda for this evening replacing video conference hardware, and I'm curious where that's going since I do collab.
Well, so yeah, so one
These
of the
days.
things, yeah, so I know Harry and we had touched on this a little bit in a previous episode, and because one of the things we have Cisco hardware in some of our classrooms, we try to stay as agnostic as possible, and one of the things that we'd like to do is just get that hardware out of there. Now I know that's more of a possibility using AV systems and things like that for those of us in higher ed space where maybe yes it needs to be secure, but it doesn't need to be government level secure. So is there a possibility going in the future, short-term future, long-term future, do we see soft codecs as an option for higher encryption level, security level systems? Is that something that we could see? And that's kind of that's why I was kind of going with that thought line there.
We've got a mix. Yeah, in our case, I mean, I think most of us probably have, soft codecs, running in various things, and we've got, we have our larger video rooms. I would venture to say that probably at this point, any of the major manufacturers, I mean, it used to be, and if you go back far enough, Tamberg was the only one that was really doing encryption right back in the day. That's why they had the U.S. government contracts. I mean, I remember sticking one in the Sandia. And they were, but now, I mean, now everybody is running reasonable, at least has let me rephrase that. Everybody has the capability for the most part of reasonable encryption and security measures. The worry I get on soft codecs, and maybe this is just me being an old curmudgeon, is the ability to compromise the device that that the software is running on. And at least, on a hard codec, yeah, I can physically harden the device to an extent, right? It's like you've got, the device, you understand that, well, hopefully you can control the firmware, you can control the connections. I worry a little bit about what else could be running as hijack on a soft codec.
Well, okay, soft codecs generally live on a BYOD situation, meaning a laptop,
a phone, a laptop.
Yeah.
But sometimes I've seen it where there's like a room PC.
Mm-hmm.
that would be just the codec is living on that room PC, or I mean, you can stick a whole PC on a thumb drive, right? So,
Yep.
And when you have that kind of device, it is so unmanaged. It is so unmaintained. It's just a bloody mess because nobody owns that PC to say, yes, I accept the update or whatever.
There's the problem I've got with room PCs. I guess there's the, and I'm very open to argument, but that's exactly the problem I have with room PCs is nobody takes ownership of the damn things.
Well, yeah,
See, unless you have
I'm different.
And that's what I was gonna say. I think James and I are probably in the same boat on that. So all of our podiums have Mac Minis in them. So, but we're responsible for the updates, security patches, whatever needs to be done. So, but yes, but I also, what Murphy was saying, I've also seen that as well, where PCs get left in credences for I'm going to say decades, because I'm sure there's been some that have been out there for 10, 15 years that are probably still running like Windows XP because somebody decided not to run it for some reason. But yes, that is probably full of holes, and that's a gap.
That's why you have the Zooms and the Teams coming to like end this whole argument. There's no, I mean, they're going to take over. I mean, I'm sorry, that's my opinion on them.
That is true. I second that. Yeah.
UC is just the answer to almost all of those questions because they're not a device, so to speak. They're an environment. It's like an ecosystem. Like you can plug in something that's Zoom certified, and the Zoom certification process for anything, be it a touch panel or be it a device or of anything, whatever is Zoom certified. And I'm just using Zoom because obviously I love Zoom, but
And we are also using it on this podcast. So
Obviously, yes. And that's the thing, right? So that's what Zoom does. It certifies a product, and when you say certify it, it's not just for functionality. It does it for security. It handles the updates. It handles the security fixes. And it makes sure that you can't have functionality of this particular device if it's not updated. And here's the other thing. There's an antiquated way of looking at updates, right? Because in the past, the reason why we as AV folks are so averse to updates is because whenever we did updates in the past, it almost always broke something. So the general terminology was, if it's working, don't update it, just let it go, right? But that's not what updates are today. Updates today give you features. They give you, it's not just about patching a security hole. It gives you new features. It gives you new, like right now, we have a Zoom software running. They're going to come up with an update at some point. It gives you the ability for 10 other filters or whatever, right? So there's no way people are not going to update these devices. And that's why a lot of these spaces that used to rely on either a hard codec or a soft codec with a PC for that matter, you're going to have UC devices come and take that over. So that's something that we should be prepared for.
My own argument there, and maybe this is
real quick.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, Cisco still breaks things with their firmware upgrades.
Of course.
Oh yeah.
Everyone breaks.
Oh,
Hey,
hell yes.
Everyone, even Microsoft breaks.
Let me tell you.
Everybody does.
Our
Like their own API on a regular basis. It's
Uh-huh.
mhm.
No, without a doubt, and
The best one was when they put a couple of extra L's in dialing when they gave it back to you. So when you were parsing for something, suddenly you weren't parsing for the right thing because they couldn't spell.
Mhm. Well, yeah,
But-
or like when they give they change the audio levels on the firmware when you've already dialed in your microphones and your speakers for appropriate
Oh, yeah.
level.
Oh,
all
don't
of a sudden
start
you
me
go-
on that one.
And then all of a sudden you walk in and then it's like blaring out of the speakers and I've got feedback in the system and it's like, well, what happened? Oh, we pushed out an update last night. Were you gonna tell me? Like, and of course it's like 2 days before classes start. So, but I'm not
So-
bitter.
So to me, there's got to be a whole workflow when you do updates. But
Correct.
right before I get into that, let me talk about the Room PC. And maybe I'm a little biased and a little narrow-minded here, or narrow view with higher ed, is we do utilize in-room PCs, but we have ownership. Our IT department, our help desk manage it. They get turned on, they get updated remotely. All this stuff is being managed, and we actually have a pretty decent recycling upgrade time on our PCs. So most of them get upgraded within a 5-year time period of a physical box itself. So if you have that kind of workflow there, then an in-room PC is great, because especially in higher ed, you're not just doing UC. You might be running a PowerPoint. You don't need a video conferencing. You may just be running a simple PowerPoint, or
Sure.
showing a YouTube
Mhm.
video, or an Excel sheet. So having an in-room PC, it helps you manage that simpler. Now, going with the whole workflow is when you're running updates, firmware update, Windows update, whatever kind of patches, even security patches and stuff, it should be done in a secure sandbox where
Mhm.
you throw it in, you are testing it, you make sure it doesn't break anything before you deploy it to 2, 3, 4,000 devices and you break your whole system.
Saying we should have change management processes.
What an
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, I
What a
mean-
thought.
If you're not bug scrubbing, if you're not labbing stuff up,
Yep.
I don't have a lot of sympathy for technology Darwin Awards.
Oh, yeah.
So on that note, I'm getting pinged, so I'm going to leave you with Harry and Frank's capable hands.
Well, thank you.
Thank
very
you,
And
much.
Mark.
I'm going to go jump and do a network security change.
Don't
So
be a stranger,
Alright.
man.
thank you much.
Godspeed.
Mark.
Take it easy, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Adios.
Yeah, take care, Mark.
All right. Oh, now my nice line has
Yeah.
disappeared now.
Renee's in there.
Renee,
Frank's in the middle
yeah,
now.
Renee bumped up.
No, Murphy bumped up.
Uh, so,
Moving
I'll
on
move it.
up.
I'm moving you.
all right. Well, I mean, so any other thoughts about that? I know we kind of
I
got
was
a
gonna say,
little.
are we still on the codecs and stuff?
Because we could go on and on.
I was gonna say we could go on and on. Yeah.
That's the thing with security. There's
They
so
know what
many
Harry does.
sub avenue. Like with security, there's so many sub avenues. So like we could talk about security of UC. We could talk to security of computers or cyber security or hard security. Like we could sit here and talk for weeks on it. So
Well,
Maybe you
I-
guys should just make this a regular thing. Just do an occasional
Well,
thing.
Here's the plug again for the HEPNA. If you
I was-
guys want to
yeah.
hear more about security, please register for the HEPNA conference where we're going to have Harry, Frank. We're going to have an InfoSec person from Harvard. I do apologize. I forget her name off the top of my head. And I think there's a couple other people we're trying to get in our InfoSec and higher ed, or at least higher ed security in there as well.
so
What
yeah,
date is
so
it?
Sorry, what was that?
What date is it, James?
February 9th, 10th, and 11th. I think ours is on the 10th at 4 p.m.
yeah, each day is themed, so it's kind of like, so if you go to hetma.org, the whole schedule is there, and you can register there as well. And then actually, if you go to higheredav.com, there's a link there that'll get you to hetma.org too. So you could kill two birds with one stone as you navigate your way through the websites. So yeah, so the security could, like I said in the beginning, the security conversation is going to continue because yeah, right now we're mostly remote. We're going to get people back in buildings. I know that's a point of discussion as well. That's a whole nother thing about people being back in buildings versus staying remote. But this conversation is not ended. So we've done a lot of that today. I mean, Harry, did you have any 2 cents to put in on the hard codec?
I was just going to throw out that I mean, in unclass environments, yeah, they're starting to use a little bit more of the soft codec stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of driving us a little bit nuts just because the systems weren't designed for it. So we're having to go in and rewire them on a case-by-case basis to make the systems actually work.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, they all have room PCs that are being taken care of by IT. So at least that's on there. Until they do an update and they break the friggin' PC and make it go to sleep and it never comes back. But that's another story.
Yeah.
But the moment you move out of a completely unclass environment, oh hell no. We're not doing any soft codecs. There is none of that. There's no cloud, there's no soft codecs, there's nothing like that. You get hard codecs with encryption, as tunneled as they can get. I mean, it just took, because the boxes needed to go through security and because there's not as many people on site anymore. Even fewer after today. We just started putting in we started swapping out some higher level security endpoints that we started this 6 months ago. We submitted the boxes 6 months ago, and we're just now getting them to all them.
Wow.
So it's a completely different world. I'll just go with that, because I came, because I mean, before I was here, I was actually at Diversified, and yeah, I mean, and we were doing plenty of soft codec rooms. I mean, that was our jam. We were doing soft codec rooms all over the place, and then I got back into government, and it's like, oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, about that.
Speaking of that, as soon as we get, it seems like the HVAC system for Target, right? That was, and they're like, okay, we're going to harden all our HVAC systems, I would assume, because there was that one story where people became aware. Is the big breach for an AV system? Perhaps I'm unaware because people don't try to shout it from the rooftops, but when somebody gets that, then I would think companies are going to start hardening when the stories come out that this was a point of weakness.
That seems to be the only way that they do.
Yeah.
when it comes to security, it's not if you're going to be attacked or hacked. It's
when you're going to be attacked.
Yes.
Mhm.
And yes, there will be a situation where a hack is happened via an AV equipment. It might have already happened. We just aren't aware of it at this time. But we are reactionary in AV with security, or actually security in general. We're not proactive. We got to start becoming proactive and making sure we are up to scare. It's like if you look at most antivirus programs, they're always out of date because viruses are always changing. They're one step ahead of the game. Same with hackers. There's always one step ahead of the game. And regulations didn't help with that. I mean, RSA encryption took forever to come out because the government kept squashing it. But they finally was able to get it and get it out there. But that will happen. We will hear about, especially with more people working from home now.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have someone's device. We're not going to pick on any brands here, but I mean, because I don't actually ever use it. But like, let's take a D10 thing that you can is a UC device. It has a computer in it somewhere. There's some kind of chip on that. That's you throw that on a VPN. Now you're throwing that back to your corporate network. That device now has access to your network. Now there was a big security concern in AV equipment with Samsung TVs. When the smart TVs first came out, they had a microphone where you can talk to them, and they were recording to Samsung servers. These TVs were getting installed in CEO boardrooms, closed door meetings. TVs recording everything behind closed doors. It came out, they got patched, that was fixed, but they were reaction, not proactive. Again, it already happened. That information already got out of these closed door meetings, and we're in the public sector.
Mm-hmm. Well, it took legislation from like California to get things locked down. Like default passwords weren't allowed. I think that's how like Atlona ended up getting forced into, because root Atlona was never an option anymore.
Yeah.
So
trying to think. I had it in my head and then it just ran the hell away.
It happens all the time.
It's what they people on again, I'm gonna throw AV and the AM out, but people talk about voice control for things, and it's like there's no way in hell I'm getting voice control anywhere near anything in any of my buildings, because that goes to that is always, I joke and I call my Amazon devices my NSA devices, but they are listening all the time because they need to hear the wake word.
Yep.
It doesn't matter which one you have. And so those are an automatic security risk because it's taking anything that you're saying, especially after the wake word, or it thinks it hears the wake word. How many of those boxes have turned on when you didn't think they were supposed to turn on when you said something that was close, like perhaps the name of our industry association.
Yeah, I gotta be careful about that because I got one of those like right behind me over here. So
right there.
Yeah.
But if it turns on, it's automatically sending it to a cloud server somewhere, and you've lost control of that at that point. And that's the big thing with government is if they can't control end to end, they don't want it.
And that's the thing.
And that's where that's where I'm kind of coming in with my own stuff a little bit. I'm actually reversing on the cloud a lot for myself, just because it's like, okay, no, I don't particularly want to store a lot of those things online somewhere. I mean, I've I've got documents, I've got all kinds of stuff. It's like, no, I'm going to drop all that stuff onto this nice big drive here that I've got, and that way I'm going to store that myself and not put that in the cloud, because who knows what could happen. I mean,
Well, and
look
I
at
mean-
what happened. Go ahead, Tim.
I was gonna give a little shout out to Marist College up in Poughkeepsie, New York. They actually have an IoT security lab that they have that's been they've been
Nice.
doing research. They've been doing research on the security of IoT devices. And
Nice.
they literally, that's what they do. The kids are there, and I say kids, the college students
Nice.
are there trying to break it and to break into it. And so I was up there for CCUMC conference back, when we were able to do that. They took us on a little tour. They showed us their lab. It's a cute little lab because it's like 2 little rooms in the basement of the library, as most of us are. But it's there are groups, at least it seems like, that are trying to secure it better. And I know that's also, but what Harry is saying is very true too, though, is that in order for these devices to function, they need to always be listening. Otherwise you're not touch free. So
the one thing with the Google, I don't know if Harry heard this, is they actually have in their code, apparently, I've heard, and they were piloting, is to use the device with no wake command, that it will just respond. I'm like, no way that's gonna work well. Yeah.
Is it detecting my brain waves?
I have no clue, but my whole thing was, let's not even go with the whole malicious attack of trying to steal data or anything. Is especially like Tim and I, we work in higher education. Yes, I would love to put voice controls in, but let's throw this scenario out here. We work with students. They are going to do things to disrupt classes. You have a teacher come in and go, okay, blah, turn on the system. System turns on. You have a student, hey, blah, turn off the system. Yeah, the teacher can discipline the student, kick them out of the class, whatever. You already got disrupted. Like right there, it's already out of control. Or what you run into is Tim might go, hey, blah, turn on the system. I might come in and go, hey, blah, turn on the projector. Now you got a code for both of those.
Mm-hmm.
Different commands, but they both do the same thing. So you got to take that into account. So that's where I'm with the voice commands, where I'm a little iffy with them. Now with the cloud thing, is like Harry says, you don't know what that cloud provider is doing. As I said on the one episode, and Joe mocked me, rightly, was, what is a cloud? It's a fancy word for somebody else's computer.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting your data on someone else's computer. And I know Dropbox had this for a while where they got flagged that in their terms that once you put the data on there, it's theirs. It doesn't belong to you anymore. And if the FBI or NSA or whoever asked for that data, they would turn it over freely. And you had no say in it. Now, I think they changed those terms, but that was when they first came out.
Well, I mean,
we can talk all night about
cybersecurity laws have always been, it's always evolving. I mean,
yep.
Yeah. So there are challenges. I mean, again, I don't want the listeners of this to think that we're being alarmist here, because there are applications for everything. There are some places where the cloud works great. And just when we think that a non-cloud, standalone operative of whatever, like your server or data storage or whatever it is, you think it works, there are downsides to it too. I think what's important is to understand that as solutions providers, or as people who are advising on technology, we need to draw the line where our strengths are, what are we good at, what can we do, and tell them that this is not on our, this is not up to us, we're not that great at this, let's defer to somebody else. And also, we should be able to give them the right direction in terms of designing these systems, just future-proofing them. And to that, I'd like to also say, I know manufacturers are always under the gun for security issues, right? You know, it's like I don't see a single thread where we don't throw somebody under the bus for it. It's not that they're not trying, you know, it's like, because that's one of the things that I personally like to do whenever somebody comes up with a new product. We try to test, we try to see what's happening. And, you know, off late, there's a lot of effort in this direction. I think what's happening and what needs to happen more is that security should not be seen as an additional feature. You know, that's what's critical. You know, security is not a feature. It is your product. It is your product. You need to provide a secure product, not just say, yeah, I mean, we support XYZ encryption. No, it's not about supporting something, because that's not how IT works. You need to have the entire range of solutions on there and make sure your product is secure, and say, the question should be, how are you securing your device? Well, let me tell you, this is what I'm doing, A, B, C, D, and give them the entire list of things that you've done as far as your product is concerned. So don't ever think that security is a feature. Don't think that networking is an added skill. It should be all part of you at this point. You know, that's how we as technologies and as cross-platform experts, that's how we develop. I mean, we're great at AV. Let's now reach out into overlying areas of IT and networking and security and just enhance our skill set. Let's not draw the line and say, there's an IT department to handle that, I'm not going to do that. No, you got to know your stuff too. And that's probably the only way we're ever going to cross this bridge.
And that was perfectly said, Frank. I couldn't even wrap that up better myself. So thank you for that. So, and yeah, so I really hope everyone got something out of this conversation today. Awesome. I know I did. So this, you know, thank you, Harry and Frank and Mark, who had to jump off just a little before. But we are now gonna wrap up with our weekly special, and it's time for the firing range.
Muted.
Oh,
there it is.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Redo.
Try again. Try it again. Now you are. Now you're not. There it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
I wasn't even muted. It's so funny. I've been talking for like 2 hours.
Kim, go ahead to let us know what we're firing at today.
Yeah, you know, I love this article for tonight because I think it's just so on point. So I found this article from HuffPost. The title is Japanese Man Selling Hyper-Realistic Masks Featuring Faces of Strangers. So this man actually paid strangers approximately $400 to make 3D silicone versions of their faces, which he turned into masks, which you can buy for about $1,000. So I think, you know, given the fact that the last week in the United States was really spent like trying to identify perpetrators in, you know, people who infiltrated the Capitol building, who may have been wearing like half face masks or no masks. Given that we all are working in the realm where there's like facial detection technology going on, with the onset of biometrics, I thought this was a really fascinating article because these things are so lifelike that you could literally wear a mask and look like a completely other human who's not like a made up human. These are real other humans. So this is the firing range tonight. So I think what we're going to debate is whether this should or should not be legal here in the United States. Now, the firing range gimmick is that you do not get to pick which side you are on. You have to debate whichever side you are put on. So Tim, you're going to be the team captain.
Okay.
Would you prefer to pick your team first or be for or against first? Pick the position first.
Well, are you the other captain?
I'm going to be the other captain.
You're the other captain, so you get first pick. I will.
Team?
Of team, yes.
All right, so then you get first pick of which side you're arguing. I'm going to pick Harry.
Okay.
It's not middle school anymore.
You know what? I'll take our other guest. I'll take Frank.
All right, awesome. I'm going to take Nancy.
All right. I will take Renee.
All right. Murphy's mine.
And then I got James. It works out perfectly. I got the corner over here.
Yeah, good thing Mark left so we could have even team. All right, so which side are you going to pick there, Tim?
Team, what do you guys think? Should we go for illegal?
Against. Yeah.
This is illegal. We're going with this is
crap.
illegal.
I don't
right,
know.
well,
I'm kind of on the fence, but I'll be with you guys.
You got to roll with it, Frank.
I'm gonna
Yep.
roll.
Yeah.
We're so pro
Unless you wanna be-
masks of strangers.
Unless you want to be Gina and just flip flop on
No.
both sides.
No.
I might just do that.
All right, does everybody on my team
That's
know
worth-
how this works?
No, no.
All right, so we are just gonna pretend that we are gung ho for our position about silicone masks.
And if they should be illegal or if it's or legal, yeah.
C's
Anybody
for
wanna-
legal.
Yeah.
So we're yeah.
Okay.
Then
Sorry, I missed
go
it.
ahead. Oh, all right. Go ahead, Kim. You lead off since I
No,
picked.
does anybody want to kick off the debate?
I'll start it.
Yeah, you go, Murphy.
Okay, here we go. Now, I just published my weekly essay about diversity being really important. Diversity. And this is an example of how we can experience what it's like. You know, we say walk a mile in someone's shoes, walk a mile in someone's face. Okay. This is an example of how we can really experience some of what it's like. And being able to understand the perspective of another is really beneficial, and it helps us in society. This is a strength, and it helps us be open-hearted. So I'm going to say, you know, being able to do that keeps us from a lot of dangerous extremist views, just like I said in my essay that I just published. So I'm going to say this is really going to benefit society in a lot of ways, even
You
though
are
it's creepy.
so
but we
right.
open ourselves.
You are so right, Murphy. All right, Tim, your team.
All right. Anybody on my side want to lead off with the illegality of it?
Oh, I will start. I'm not.
Go ahead, Frank.
Because I can think of 1,000 ways this is gonna mess up your society. Hacks. We just talked about. We went on a long, conversation about cybersecurity. Good Lord, I can just imagine the things that'll happen. Has anybody ever tried unlocking your phones with your face? And now somebody else can unlock your phone. Has anybody had a facial recognition software where you walk into a place? Well, assuming that these masks are hyper realistic, I can just envision a whole lot of problems there. Again, I'm just rolling with it.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Go ahead, Kim. Back to you.
All right, anybody want to go? All right, I will jump in. So listen, I can go into my bathroom and put on all kinds of makeup. I can go to my plastic surgeon and get fillers injected all over my face. I can try and turn myself into a human cat. And it is perfectly legal for me to do that. I can get complete tattoos all over my entire body and no one can stop me. But you're going to prevent me from wearing a plastic face? You just try. You just try, Tim.
Well, and here's how I'm going to stop you on this one. Let's just take the recent events of 2 weeks ago with the storming of the Capitol building. If every one of those people that stormed the Capitol building were wearing one of these things, there is no way we would have been able to track down all of them the way we have, because they'd be chasing off after some. Where are they from? What is it? Oh, they're from Japanese. Some Japanese person. Well, but what if he multi-produces? So are we chasing down like 500 of the same Japanese person? Like this is not for a national security. Since we're talking about security, you can't have this. Like this is just not an acceptable use of this product. Now, I will give you a little bit, Kim. If you would want one of these masks with your makeup already laid out over it and that went over your existing face and it was clear otherwise, I think I'd be okay with that. But the fact that these are digital images of people's existing faces that are 3D printed, that's a problem. And that's too much. And that's too real. Illegal.
Nancy, Harry, who wants to go?
Okay. Oh, okay. Go, Harry.
Okay. Going back a little bit further than just the Capitol, you see where the illegal train can take you in a very bad situation when you look at China and Hong Kong. And China is using recognition to give you a social credit score where you can't even get on a plane if you jaywalk or things like that. So no, it is a very slippery slope if you give the government the ability to make it illegal for you to just wear a mask. Okay, that's why they had all the lasers and everything in Hong Kong, because they were messing with the facial scanners. Okay, so no, I am not for giving the government a chance to make the expression of wearing a mask on your face, and this is about the only time that I'll go be pro-mask, wearing a mask on your face, to make that illegal. No, it's a free expression. Stop it.
All right.
All right.
Okay,
Free
Oh.
speech.
back to us, right?
Yeah, it's one of you two. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Renee.
Okay. Okay. First of all, you cannot walk around with other people's faces on your face. It's just freaking weird, first of all. So what happens when you go rob a bank and the facial detection grabs, John Smith, and poor John is sitting in his house with his 400 measly dollars that he got for selling his face and gets arrested? How do you get yourself out of that deal? I'm sorry, but it's creepy. It's just creepy. It's just an ethical, creepy thing. But did you do any research on this dude before you bought his face, his or her face? Like, were they a serial killer or a rapist or a murderer? I mean, really, what happens? But $1,000 to buy these masks, you could buy like 100 masks that you just, with different fun expressions. I mean, first of all, and last of all, grandma.
Oh!
Scare the hell out of grandma. And who would want to scare grandma?
Because grandma could have a heart attack, and then
But you're not arguing whether you should or shouldn't do it. It's whether it should be illegal or legal.
Oh.
Well, let's just say if you can impersonate somebody and go rob a bank, that
Playing
shouldn't be
grandma
illegal.
card in the firing range should be illegal.
Maybe we need to stop relying on facial recognition quite so much for
Well,
everything.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother firing range.
that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Security
Stay
thing.
on target.
Anything to hurt grandma is illegal.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Don't scare grandma.
Oh,
Nancy.
no.
All right, back to your team, Kim.
Well, I was going to say, let's look at this psychologically. You have somebody who's not confident, they're an introvert, and if they could wear somebody else's face, maybe, it makes them feel good and they'll go out there and have, a fantastic day. So there's also an image thing.
I think grandma might like it.
Grandma does not.
I
I am a
guarantee you, grandma. Grandma
That's
think
my
it's
argument is feeling personally, happy and confident with inside because there's something about yourself. So here you get to live in somebody else's face. Oh.
Oh, gee. Well, I was just saying that, so wait, so by all that, were we saying that the guy, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface, wearing the faces, that's we're okay with that? Come on now.
Take it out.
But all right, well, James, and
All right.
bring us home.
So we were talking about security all night. One of the biggest thing hackers are doing is stealing people's identity. You have credit cards being stolen. You have people filing for mortgages and credit cards and loans in other people's names. They might be doing it in grandma's name. And again, let's save grandma here. So say I'm an unethical person. I get a mask of grandma. I go to the bank and I take out a big loan in grandma's name. And then I make her go foreclose on her house. She get kicked out of her house. She didn't get this loan. I did. But grandma is being punished. This is why it should be illegal. And because we already have laws against identity theft. And this is now just adding to that two-form authentication that we talked about earlier. Now, besides having grandma's password, I now have something of grandma, her face. So let's save grandma. Let's keep her in her house and keep it illegal.
All right. I think we I know I'm biased, but I think we won that one, honestly. We saved grandma. So
Y'all like cheated and played the grandma card like 10 times.
hey, if Mara can play any of the
Correct.
her cards, we're playing the grandma card here. So
Disappointed. You guys are so anti-Halloween.
oh no, I'm not saying anything about Halloween. You know,
No.
we can still have Halloween, but this is not Halloween. This is for like regular usage.
I
Yeah.
want to know where the line is drawn between like a rubber mask of Donald Trump and a silicone mask of a real human in Japan.
Hey, when you spend $1,000 on that mask, you need to come hang out with me and buy my dinner and that sort of thing. Like that buys a lot of fun. $1,000.
Well played, Team Tim. You won the firing range.
And don't forget, identity theft is not a joke, according to Dwight from
No.
The Office.
Oh yeah.
It's way better when they pull your eyeballs out. I'd be so
The little thing is what was that? That was Avengers. It was
Or they cut off your hand and use it on the door. It's way
oh yeah,
better.
if we were Mission Impossible style, yeah,
Stuff
you're
to think of.
scanning.
I think this is getting very dark.
Yeah,
Oh, welcome to the AV life, Frank.
Let's talk about
Control is
network
on show.
security.
Let's go back.
And save grandma.
But we saved grandma.
But we saved grandma. All right. Well, on that note, we've saved grandma. We've talked about, you know, almost ending Halloween. It sounded like there for a second, but and we had a very great conversation about network security. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Frank, for joining us, guys. A pleasure having you on the show. Want to let us know where our guests can, or where our listeners can find you guys? Either one first, I don't care.
I was gonna say I'm on Twitter for now as AV Grump. Follow me if you probably want to be ticked off at some point.
You can
And,
find me on Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram. It's Frank Patakala everywhere.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'm going to thank just a general thank you to the crew, because I think we're almost at like an hour and a half on this episode, if not more. So so, you know, we had 20 minutes last week. This week, it's like an hour and a half. So thank you very much to all of you guys. Always a pleasure having you here. Guys and ladies, I'm sorry I used that general guys. So,
Dude.
dude, thank you, dudes. And yeah, so for the crew and for myself, thank you for listening to our episode, and until our next adventure.